Hey everybody, Texas Trucker here at Lance's Performance Shop, LoneStarMopars.com, and it is a very late night here in the shop. Sunday, 11:40, just about midnight. It's toasty in here. I've got some fluid draining, some batteries charging, some fans in the background. Apologies if you hear any of it, but while I try to be somewhat productive while I let these things take their natural course before I go in and shower antifreeze off of my body, figured we'd check out something I brought in a while back. So that item is not this item. This item is a little Harbor Freight go through socket set, pass throughs as I prefer to call them, and there's not a lot of places to source this type of a thing, especially this comprehensive a set for that price. I think that's why most of us own it. Based on the comments when we did that tool haul, quite a few of you had it for similar reasons. Here's the thing. This takes up a good bit of space in a drawer, and I mentioned I wasn't happy with it, and I wondered how people were storing things. And it turns out a lot of people are not happy with this thing being stored like this. It's not like some of the socket sets you can sort of reuse the holder, like if you're on a budget or you just want to like throw them in a box type of a thing, right? This is not really one of those unless you wanted to like run screws through the back or set cable ties up. I think if you're very careful, you could do it, but eventually you're going to come in and you're going to grab this thing and it's not going to catch right, or it's going to be worn a little bit more, or maybe it's hot or cold and the plastic does something funky, and basically once this thing hinges, you're kind of in a mess because it's going to jostle, these things are going to come off. It's not the greatest, most secure thing in the world, right? So what is a guy to do? What are you to do? What did I wind up thinking I could do? Well, I've got what I want to try, and what I'm gonna do is pop this back up and grab the 19 millimeter. And this is kind of what you're dealing with. And you think, well, hey, you like Ernst? Throw it on a twist lock socket rail. Some of you say like, hey, this would be really good for one of those like MTS mag rails or friction peg deals. Those would be great options if this was like a normal socket, but as you can see, it's pass through, right? So you've got your business end here, and what would typically be your drive end is just designed for whatever threaded rod or fastener or stud that you might be dealing with to allow that to pass through. That's kind of the whole point, right? And where that becomes an issue is how on earth are you supposed to economically come in and store these sockets in a better fashion. You could do some crazy things. You could take, like a piece of sheet metal, you could tack weld some bolts to it so it'll drop down. You could even size the threaded rods or something. You could also come in, and if you wanted to like go all out, you could have something cut with a hex profile to match each socket and have it nest in there and laser etch labels. That's a lot of money to spend for pass-through socket sets that you probably used a coupon on and got for sub $20. So let me kind of walk you through some classic options here, right? Cheapest, most economical thing would be spring steel. I've got a ton of these because I don't like them, and here's the issue you're going to have. It's not going to happen. Turn it this way, and you could technically, if you wanted to, use this in that orientation, but here's the deal. This is the biggest metric, okay? So it'll tuck in right there. It's upside down. It's not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but if we spring this out carefully and I come in and grab the smallest one, which is going to be a 10, okay? So of course pass through is not going to fit, but now this doesn't fit. So you're going to have to intermingle things, and then it's not holding at all. It's just basically a placeholder, right? It's as if you sat it in a drawer like that. If we were content with that, we wouldn't need to be doing any of this. So spring steel, out. Unless, of course, like I said, you're okay with that. Next up, you'd have something like cool and labeled and trick, like this MTS twist lock with the size labels. Awesome, you say. Well, again, there's no drive size. Here's your 10, okay? And this one's set up for 1/2 inch sockets. Again, you can kind of rest it there. You'd have to intermingle things. You'd have to dissect multiple sets to even make this functional in the terms of just kind of like you see here, the 19 sitting on top of the 19. Good luck with that. You're going to spend a ton of money, a ton of time, and it's still not secure. So, up next, you think, well, hey, Ernst, that's a little bit more economical. It would be, especially if you just did like one rail or a mag rail or something. Again, this is a quarter drive peg. You say, well, hey, that's not fair. You know, you used 1/2 inch on these other things. Well, we come in and we've got a 1/2 inch Ernst peg, and again, you know, it'll sit there. It'll also sit here. It actually, okay, in the case of the 19, this on this side, it actually would function, as you can see there. So that's a win. If you had all 3/8 pegs or leftover 3/8 pegs, you get the idea. This is just not going to make you happy. The downside here, if we come in with this, you know, by golly, you would have to struggle with these, and this is not like twist locked. This is just like friction fit, so eventually, you know, enough jostling, it would probably free. But the 10 and the 19 check out there. I was not expecting that based on previous experience. But again, it would serve as the best placeholder out of what I have shown you, a 1/2 inch Ernst deal. Just keep in mind there may be some where that doesn't work. Like, let me see, I'll grab the biggest SAE, which is 3/4. Dude, it's okay. We might have found a backup plan here. So let's get the smallest SAE, which would be, don't even remember the sizes on this thing. Oh boy, that was so clutch to the side here. You would be proud of me. Not even the paper fell. Anyway, back to what matters here. We've got a 5/16. You could force that on there. This is not like gonna perform as an Ernst typically would. That stuff's actually an option. I was not expecting that. I thought I'd played around with it and given up. Interesting thing. Now, of course, a 1/2 inch is, of course, what I am the lowest on. I've got a little quarter, tons of 3/8 pegs. I'm in desperate need of 1/2 inch. There's several things I need to store and organize, and I'm waiting on those for. So that might be an option. Again, it will not be the ability to twist and lock, but you might have enough of a friction hold for a little while. I don't know if it's going to be the 10th time you take this pass-through socket off. It'll be the 1000th time you take it off. At some point, it's probably going to wear either the plastic or the socket enough that you're not going to have it secure. But in terms of putting it in a drawer as a placeholder type of thing, I think that's actually somewhat functional. So we learned something here today that kind of botches the video, but the video is, of course, as the title probably says, the world's most expensive socket organizer. And as best I know, I am not stretching that in any way, shape, or form. The MTS stuff is expensive, but if you shop around, I've gotten many of those mag rails for like dirt cheap. The friction pegs, which I didn't even showcase, again, you could use one of those, but it wouldn't be good for transporting this, right? Those are dirt cheap. Ernst socket bosses or socket rails as standalones or customs, blank rails with pegs of your choice. Those are economical. Spring steel, you can probably find somebody giving that away to you if you'll take it off their hands. There's a couple of like Harbor Freight type of options. There's the pegs. I hate the pegs. They take up, you can't put those in a shallow drawer. I don't believe that set's deserving of like a deep socket drawer if you've got competing real estate, you know, something you're going to use more frequently. So I like them flat, kind of like that, or just laid out. The pegs, of course, are the issue because they stand tall. So that brings in this right here in a filthy, filthy package. This was $24.48, and I, as you know, shopped around and got the best deal possible. I cannot tell you how dusty and nasty that thing is, and I say that as a man covered in antifreeze. VIM MR112B. This is a low-profile 12-inch mag rail, of course anodized in blue. Picked it up from National Tool Warehouse for $24.48. Now here's the thing, okay? You've probably seen these, and maybe some of you have seen them on a tool truck. Maybe some of you have ordered them in or have them or have seen them online. Some people swear by them. Some people live and die by them. People tell you about how strong the magnets are, etc., etc. They are insanely expensive. This is 12 inches for $25, and note, there is nothing with it. Nothing at all. So, you come in, and to get pegs, keep in mind, I didn't know which size of peg to get. You're going to have VIM, let's see here, it's going to be on another page. Item number, MRSB, at least at National Tool Warehouse. This is a one pack of, I guess, 10 studs for $3.08. That's right here. And I'm going to hit on something else here shortly, but we're not done. Since they're apparently so OP and powerful, you need a way to lift those out of your drawer or off of whatever you've adhered them to. And that's where VIM item number MRRL1, which is one pack of 10 mag rail lifters for $5.68. Now, you have to buy a pack of 10 on each of those things, as best I can tell. So if we need a mag rail lifter, just want one of them or one on each side, you got 8 extras there to do something with. Lord knows what you're going to do with them. So $5.68 in accessories, and what was the other price we paid? $3.08, so we'd be looking at $8.76 plus our $24.48, so $32.76, 33, so $33.24, something like that for what you see here. 8 of which items are going to be overflow and useless to you unless you buy more of these. This stuff was so expensive, until I tried it out, I did not want to commit to another rail. Okay. I'll tell you something else, and I say this as somebody that, who knows, I may wind up loving this, I may hate it, I may think, yeah, it's okay, it's expensive, I like my other stuff better. It needs to be said, it needs to be heard. I don't know where everyone's buying theirs from. Trying to figure this out, like, wanted to escalate this past PG-13 there, but trying to figure out what in the world you are actually buying, the length, the quantity of the bag, whatever they're doing, is almost impossible. If you look at multiple vendors, you're going to see different, like, contradictory information, and then typically in those situations I'm like, you know, I wonder which one of these is accurate and which one's inaccurate. I better go to the OEM, you know, I'll go to the manufacturer's page, or, you know, where they're sourcing it from. Keep in mind, I don't believe VIM makes anything. I think they just kind of source some stuff. They source some cool stuff to their credit. But you come in and you go to their website and you think, okay, this will explain it and walk me through it. No. It does not. You leave there more confused than you were when you were just about to blindly purchase from someone else. This was a deal where, as best I can tell, I had no way of getting like the 12-inch rail. I couldn't find one in stock available with the pegs already on it. If you come in and you like try to get, you know, I wanted 2 of these really, you know, a blue and a green. It's like, you can't do that. You're going to have to come in and you can go all out. You can spend like a couple $100 and get a bunch of blue stuff and a bunch of pegs. And, you know, I said, screw it. You know, like, I'm just going to check out with this bare minimum stuff, hope that what I ordered is actually what I think it is, get it in, see if it works, and go from there. And I have to tell you, every other socket organizer, regardless of if it's like made by someone and sold through 17 other vendors, private labeled, if it's, you know, straight from the OEM, Mechanics Time Savers or Ernst, if it's Olsa, if it's crud you find on Amazon, if it's like a, you know, tool organizer specialty place, toolbox widget, tool organizer, if it's stand-up pegs, you know, from like Hansen or whatever. I have never in my life wasted so much time trying to figure out what I'm even attempting to buy. And that was frustrating. And then on top of that, you're rewarded with not an El-Cheapo eBay price or something, but like the most expensive $25 here. I could have sourced like a 2-row, half-inch kitted out Ernst socket box. I could have gone in and I could have been, probably, if I'm patient enough on one of these sales I found, I probably could have had 2 of those MTS mag holders I showed you. But I wanted to try this. One of the reasons I'd never brought it in prior to this is I had attempted to, and it would frustrate me. And then also, it's super expensive, and it's never seemingly on sale. So everywhere I looked, even Summit, I couldn't make sense of their stuff. They usually have like better descriptions or expound on things. No dice. So this right here, and then it comes in and it's like filthy. So nothing else was like this in that shipment, so it's kind of weird. But right here, this is the VIM Mag Rail TL, whatever that means. I have no idea, and quite frankly, I'm not going to put forth the effort to figure out what it might mean. So I don't know why they stapled that, but whatever, it hinged. And this is filthy, good lord. Like, what was this, like placed in the Sahara Desert? I don't know. I think you can see that, like this right here. That's all dust, okay? I love anodized aluminum. It looks fantastic. This, it looks like I'm going to have to pre-clean. Look at the back of it. You know, like, this may not be VIM. This might be, like, National Tool Warehouse or something. Or, like I said, I can't blame it on the freight line because everything came in fine. Nothing else was covered in dirt. I've had stuff from Napa that came out of, like, Wyoming. Why they're shipping from there, to me, I don't know. That was like the last time I've had something that looked like it was a sand dune occupying the box, and that was a situation where everything was sharing in that. This was consolidated to this mag rail. This thing is filthy. I don't even want it on the frickin' bench. I'm gonna take this chunk here and set it on my steel table. It's strong. I don't know that it's what people act like you would die if you stood between those things. I don't think that's the case. Maybe I got like a pathetic one or the cheap one. I don't know. And again, I'm not going to attempt to find out. So right here, what I bought, since there's always those stories of, ooh, you know, you'll never be able to pick that thing up. I got a pack of 10 of these things. And again, from what I can tell, getting this was cheaper than buying it assembled or as a kit. Don't ask me. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just the guy trying to figure it out who got really frustrated and just pulled the trigger on stuff. So essentially, the way theirs is set up, it's like a track, right? So this little thing here is going to slide in between those rails, and you would have, presumably, best option would be one on each end, which kills real estate for sockets, sadly. They could kind of change their design there and put an upswing or something, kind of like a tray style, just a finger lift, you know, so it's not just adhered and you have to come in and pry and take the finish off of your toolbox or something. But again, those are just my thoughts on this. And like I said, you know, if I seem harsh, I might wind up loving this thing. But right now, I'm just reliving the horror that it was trying to order this crud. So again, right here, I had no idea what peg to get. I debated doing half. I would have liked to have done multiples. I think I couldn't find the halves available, if I recall correctly. So 3/8 was my next choice, and I thought, well, if it sucks for these pass-through sockets, you know, I could at least maybe be most likely to use these as 3/8. It looks like this thing screws on and off, so that's interesting. It'd be nice if it was fixed. I guess this way you can adjust it. I'm sure if you like tighten this down against the rail, you can kind of make it drag more or less, or, you know, turn it loose and adjust it. But what I'm going to do, sadly, I do have a shop rag here. This is just like, this is unacceptably dirty, and I cannot blame National Tool Warehouse or the freight carrier when I see the dirt ingrained in the rails of the magnet. That to me is one of two things. It's either something the manufacturer did that VIM didn't bother to, you know, clean, or say, hey, you know, what the heck are you idiots doing over there at the factory? You're sending me crud that I don't want to send out to customers and have myself look like a trash can or something. Maybe they don't care. You know, maybe this came in and they're like, oh, those are dirtier than usual, and they just did nothing but send them out to a vendor. I really don't know, but if this is me and I'm paying $25 for this 12-inch rail with 2 magnets in it, this anodized blue, if you want me to believe that it's worth $25 without anything to do anything with, put some effort into it, maybe. Like, don't send it to me as a sand dune. I don't know, you know, do something, because this is less than impressive. I can't recall ever having to clean off something else, so at least not to this degree. You know, if you want to nitpick things, sure, you'd probably find stuff on everything. I mentioned this too, you know, with Philo and Vit. You know, sometimes their drivers come in with like grease and fingerprint smudges on them. This was excessively bad, like excessively bad. Next up, now that I've kind of cleaned this, but it still has tons and tons of grit down in here, I'm sure I could zoom in and show you. I don't know if it's going to appear very well, but it's all just, there was so much of it, that's the best I can do. Now, the next thing, there's some of the anodizing coming off, which is, again, unfortunate. You can kind of see there what I'm talking about. That's nothing I did. And then right here, I guess they kind of like crimp the aluminum to the magnets to keep the magnets, I guess, from coming out, which I'm sure if we drove something in, we could do that. I don't know why you'd want to. But let's go ahead and take one of these pegs and kind of showcase what I think we would do here. So I'm going to stick this up to my face so I can see it better. And I'll tell you right now, you'll need to like assembling things to do this. If you like Legos or something, maybe this is more up your alley. Okay, and she nearly slid all the way off. That's on me. So right there, if I tighten that, you do control where it goes, what happens to it. If we come in here and we put this, which might be advisable on one side to put one of these if you ordered it. Why? Well, quite simply, if you had what I just have happen, you would run the risk of that thing sliding off, and you don't want that. So now, there's our test. We have had many things pull way through this mat. This is pulling through the mat, so it's decent, but it's definitely not the best magnet we've ever had on this thing. So keep that in mind. Now, what I want to do is we will take the 5/16. This is the smallest SAE size. Okay, now the peg is simply going to help locate it. I think this is going to work really well for these, because if I come in now and we take the 3/4, the biggest SAE, note I don't have a peg, and it's going to go there. So the peg, like this one right here, you know, note I can just push it off the rail if I want to. Okay, that required not a ton of force, but something that you could do if you drag it out of the drawer type of a thing and it catches. With that peg there, you know, like I can move it, but you can see like the peg, the way we had it tightened, is providing resistance to it. So you're gonna be in a situation, if you're gonna go this route, which I do think this will work for what we want it to do, which is hold these awkward pass-through sockets. Keep in mind that anytime you do that type of a thing, especially with two magnets on it, you could run the risk of magnetizing this, which that might be desirable, it might be very undesirable. It's kind of depend what you've got going on, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it. So what I will do is just come in and we'll go 5/16. I'll do one side of this for you. My plan, if I liked this, was to do blue and green. Blue obviously for SAE, green for metric. I don't think there's so many metric sockets, I don't think we could possibly fit them all. So this is actually not bad for this weird of a socket. And it did turn out that the Ernst actually did fit. I cannot stress enough that it will not be your typical Ernst performance with a twist lock. It'd just be like friction fit. But this actually, after I clean it up a little bit, not terrible. So can we cheap out, and is the magnet strong enough? Okay. Now, I don't know if you're thinking like I'm thinking, but if you wanted to just El-Cheapo do this thing, what would you do? You would put SAE on one side of the magnet and you would put metric on the other. And, then you wouldn't have to buy two of these. You also wouldn't have to worry about picking these ring lock extractor things up, which they're not terribly pricey, but it's just the frustration of not being able to get the whole, like, if I want to buy a 12-inch 3/8, I should be able to do that. If I want to buy a 12-inch 1/2 inch, I should be able to do that. If I want to buy a 12-inch rail with 1/2 inch pegs in a bag, I should be able to do that easily. I shouldn't have to hunt and go back to the main website. It's a train wreck. I'm just telling you, maybe they'll correct it. I really hope they do. I can tell you right now, I will not be upgrading to this or downgrading to it or using this or anything else at this point in time that I can think of. This becomes very viable in the event, A, that there's a sale, and B, you've got something weird like this. Maybe you have, like, I don't know, sensor sockets or oxygen sensor sockets, and you don't want to waste like a 13-inch Ernst rail, and there's no MTS friction peg deal for it. You don't want to put them on an MTS mag rail that's real nice. You could take something like this. I would recommend you grab the pins in that case, and you could stick this on like the side of your cart, or you know, the lid or whatever, and you could come in and we've got this thing here, and we'll just pretend that this 1 1/8" socket was like an oil pressure sensor. It's not the most secure, obviously, but, and that was the mag side, by the way. Like, I'm not cheating this. These right here, I don't think they're gonna go anywhere. This thing here, it's a Pittsburgh, okay, so it's chrome vanadium, 1 1/8". I've got my hands here away from it. One shake and she's off. Okay, now that said, it's mainly down here. They don't machine these very well, so there's a lot of material in there. Weight is good on an impact, though. What I'm getting at, though, again, you could stationary, and I might want it vertical still based on that. You could put your weird ones, you know, your crowfoot oxygen sensors, crow feet, something like that is another example. If just awkward things to store, I think this is worth a look. It would be a very, very spendy look. This is one of those things that you almost wish like Harbor Freight had, because you could probably get like a kit for like $15, you know. I'm not saying 1/4, 3/8, and half, but I'm saying like if you wanted to come in and have this thing with 1/2" pegs, you could get the whole shebang and you'd probably be out the door for like $15. The 34 or whatever this, and that was like the best prices I could find by far. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. I could see where some people might like this, but to me, I don't think it'll supplant what I currently prefer. So I'll leave it at that, but it does become viable. What I'll do is go off camera here, put the rest of the metric sockets on there, and we'll wrap this video up. Alright, so this is probably the best salesmanship I can do on this item, is this right here. And I legitimately think this is how I'm going to do this, because the plan was to get green. If I can find a green rail for a decent price, I might pull the trigger. That way I could just have them flat and kind of mirrored. Plus, I don't want to say I'll never use the metric, but I just feel like the SE is going to be far more frequently used for this oddball stuff. However, if you note, we kind of got this lined up a little differently here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 SAE sockets, 5/16 to 3/4. And if you think, well, hey, you know, this is lined up pretty good, what's the deal here? Well, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 to 19 metric. I've got 19 down to 10. Whereas SAE, we ascend 5/16 to 3/4. Why? Because when you flip it, you can kind of go like that. But laying flat in the drawer, it just kind of balances a little bit better. But what I else did is take the extension and then the little adapter and kind of lined those out. So I'll probably put a peg over here. I have not added any other pegs, but this is gonna work, I think. And the thing I love about this setup is the fact I can do that. That's about double the real estate as if this sat upright, but you've also then got to think, if I had a green rail for the metrics, it would be the same footprint, roughly, you know, give or take. So the only thing left then is the funky little ratchet, and we would just want to set that down to the side, or I mean, heck, you could go on top of it to save a lot of space if you've got the drawer height. Again, for me, this is not something that is used often. I think I've used it once since the video, and I'd used it once prior to the video. So, like I said, sometimes this is like a huge, huge space saver that could come in handy if you remember you got it. Past that, it's really just a deal where you're almost doing what I described in the first time. I was like hanging pallets from the ceiling for a friend on really, really, really long pieces of threaded rod. So your mileage may vary. Again, you might do something with this all the time. If you do actually need pass-through sockets all the time, I'm curious, like, what are you using? I would assume it's not this. You might have this. You might have this as a backup. But I would assume, like, if that was if you're like an industrial electrician, or maybe you're like I don't know, you are contracted by some like fancy exotic lighting store in your town, and you go hang all these like commercial and residential mansion lights type of a thing, or like mount airplane. You know, you never know. Like you go in these places and there's like airplanes hanging from the ceiling. You know, it's like, I wonder who had to install that. And, I don't know. I'm curious if anyone that does that sort of a thing watches this. Like, what are you using? Again, if it's this, that's great. Be honest. But if you're like, yeah, I tried that at the start and quickly upgraded. I haven't really looked for like a high-end kit, you know, of like pass-through sockets. I'm sure one exists. Who knows? Maybe this is the best or the best bang for the buck and not far off in quality. But if it applies to you a lot, let me know and everyone else, because I find that very interesting. Just when you sit there and think about some of this stuff. Now, I will tell you that this, again, the downside to this one, unlike, again, and Harbor Freight has the same issue as everyone else, okay? If you come in and you buy like their cheap hex keys, you know, like socket hex keys, if you buy like a cheap set of Pittsburghs or something, you can oftentimes use this and, you know, the sockets rip right off. It's a consistent size. This is not, okay? If I come in and I grab this 19, like, do you see it? It'll sort of hold it, but I just barely jostle it and it's gone. And then right here, if I come in and I put the 19 down here, it's even worse of a fit because that's designed for the 10, right? So that's why you see sort of the tier on this peg. I think you can kind of see what I'm talking about there. You've got kind of the machine step, if you will. Same thing on the SAE side. The other issue is, in order, it's a very nice retail presentation, and it could be nice if, say, you know, you had magnets like that VIM rail ingrained here on the inside to sort of hold those, but it's reinforced so much you'd have a nightmare of a time with that. The way that you would use this, if you wanted to, is you'd have to come in and find somewhere, you know, like you could run a cable tie, and that would keep it secure, minus, you know, these accessories that could work their way loose over time, especially as they're pulled and reinserted. But you'd have to run cable ties and then cut them and have cable ties with you to run it back. The other thing you could do, you can see there were 2 screws here. Those are, I believe, #1 Phillips, and you'd have to keep tabs on those. Now, if you had those in there, it would hold this whole thing in. The ratchet's not held in really well, and then this is pretty tight now. This, I think, would be the first to go, so again, as you carry it or it falls over in a bag or box, it could spill. Sockets would be okay, but again, then you've got to use 2 screws and flip it out and hope that, you know, like when you lift it up, you keep it parallel so the sockets don't all spill out. It's just less than ideal for like real world usage. I think that's why so many of us, myself included, we're trying to find some good way of storing and organizing this. Turning this to where 19 faces out for the OCD people, you're welcome. But yeah, I do think, as miffed as I was about the whole purchasing process on this, and I was not at the time thinking of having them stack like this, I didn't know they would do that. I legitimately was going to do blue and green, SAE and metric, as I've said before. The 3/8 peg is right here on this guy. Again, you're working with this real estate. I think you could get by with half. The half would give you the least play, which you might want. 3/8 doesn't give you a ton of play. But I'll probably go ahead and install the rest of those pegs here. 8 and then maybe 2 on the ends. Well, I can't on the bottom. I'm sorry. That's something else VIM could do, is maybe make a double-sided one. Now, if it was double-sided and it was $25, I wouldn't think that was a, you know, completely outlandish price. As is, I still feel like this is spendy, a little too spendy for what you're getting. In this case, it's there's not, now technically Ernst, we could put 1/2-inch pegs that turned out to work on these a little bit. And you could do that and you would be all in for like fractions of the price, like almost 1/4 of the price, I would imagine. But this actually works pretty well for this weird stuff. So like I said, I'll get the pegs here and then I'll put another lifter here and boom, I think this is what we're gonna roll with. So if anyone ever sees a sale on these things, let me know and maybe we'll pick up a green one. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything I would want to store on these at this price. Now, if this was more in line with Mechanics Time Savers and Ernst and your, you know, generic, everyone has them in different colors with their name on them offerings, this could come in a little bit more often. But I think I've tried pretty much everything. I feel like between Ernst and MTS, I'm kind of where I want to be with socket organization. So I'll get this thing populated out, kitted out all the way. This is actually, now that we've cleaned it up, not bad, really. So if you're willing to spend the 25, you'd at least need the 25 here. The good thing, as long as you had a socket and it didn't go down, so you didn't have to pry it, you would not need these lift hooks. I don't think you'd have to have the pegs. You certainly could. They're the cheap editions. It's just if you're willing to spend 25-ish or so, get the 12-inch, it's certainly a pretty good option here for this stuff, I would have to say so. So I'm happy. Footprint wise, we haven't done a whole lot. Keep in mind the ratchet would go there, but it's one of, and you could turn these, you know, like you could put this guy sideways and that one kind of sticking out the side, whatever you want to do. You could also get like an 18 and lay it all out, but I kind of think this is not a bad setup. So expensive, yes, very expensive, but dirty, absolutely. A pain to figure out what you're getting and what quantities you're getting it, absolutely. But the end result, all that aside and expense aside, this is not a bad way to store these. Like I said, if you use these all the time, this may not be the best bet, but for someone like myself, or it's once in a blue moon usage for a pass-through socket, think of this as a viable option. So if any of you came up with anything better in the meantime, by all means let me know, leave a comment. Anyone watching this, then they'll help out. They can be like, hey, I love the VIM stuff, I'm going that route even though it's more expensive. Or, you know, Joey230 in the comment section here had a way better idea. That's like a fraction of the money. Or you might say like, hey, you know, I've got a ton of Ernst stuff with a lot of leftover 1/2-inch pegs. I'm just going to kind of wedge them on there and see how long it lasts. So like I said, that is friction fit, not the twist lock, but it is actually doable. So like I said, I kind of ran with a 3/8 and didn't really thoroughly test the halves, I guess. So learn something here at the start of the video. But with that said, yeah, this is VIM's mag rails. They've got a lot of people that really like these things. Maybe you get like better prices on them. Maybe I bought them from the wrong place. Again, everything I could find that's in stock was a nightmare to figure out and was expensive. So that's where they stand. But yeah. With that said, LoneStarMopars.com is the website. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all three at Lone Star Mopars. If you have not subscribed, I encourage you to do so. If you do that, ring a bell while jumping your Charger across the creek. Grab your VIM mag rail and your choice of anodized colors without the lifting peg, slap it to the quarter panel, and manage to extract it without needing to pry it off. YouTube just might notify you that we got new videos every Wednesday and Saturday, 9 a.m. Texas time. With that said, it's 12:20 midnight here, so yeah, better get in and shower this antifreeze off, check what I'm draining very slowly over there, and get in for the night. But we at least got this done and accounted for, so it is an option, I will say. As much of a pain as it was to get it, as dirty as they were, as expensive as it is, it does this fairly well, whatever this is to you, but it does do it. So there you go. Hope you have yourself a fantastic week. Most importantly, I hope I catch you back here for more action from the shop.